Welcome everybody to this week's episode of the Money Soapbox series, where we talk about stewardship, how to steward the money that we have. And so I hope everybody had a great holiday. You got time to kick back, sit back, and relax and enjoy the day. As we move along in this series, we are going to cover the emotional bucket. Over the last 6 weeks or so, maybe more, I think it's been more, we've been talking about the different toxic spending habits. We've been addressing them by different buckets. Today is the last bucket that we are going to talk about that will cover all of the toxic spending habits, and that is the emotional bucket. Now, emotions are at the root of so many of our decisions. I mean, we live in a culture that runs on feelings. And I can do an entire series just on stewarding our emotions. But today we're going to talk specifically about emotions and financial decisions. Now, the Bible tells us to guard our hearts because the issues of life flow from it. Proverbs 4:23. And that includes financial issues. We don't always make the connection between emotional struggles and money problems like debt, overspending, or chasing more income just to feel secure or satisfied. Now, you probably heard the saying, don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry. Why? Because you'll be led by the emotion of hunger instead of logic. And then you'll end up overspending on things that you don't need. Now, the same is true for other emotional triggers. For example, if you are sad, you might go on a shopping spree as a pick me up. If you're happy, you may reward yourself with a dinner to celebrate or an impulsive buy. If you're bored, you scroll and shop online or wander through the mall just to look, only to end up buying. If you are stressed, you make impulse purchases to soothe the pressure or relieve the pressure. Now, how many times have you bought something only to feel guilty or regret it afterward? That is a big red flag. Because when emotions are in the driver's seat and we're just along for the ride, we almost always regret it later. Emotions are not reliable decision makers, especially when it comes to money. They don't mix well. Now, we've all heard don't drink and drive. So here's another one for you. Do not spend while emotionally high. Because when you come off the high, you're going to regret the purchase you made. So, what does emotional spending look like? Well, retail therapy, shopping to feel better. You refer to yourself as a shopaholic. That was me at one point. When you give out of guilt giving, you're spending on others because you feel bad or you're trying to impress them. or maybe even gain friends. FOMO, the fear of missing out. Spending because everybody else is doing it. TikTok Shop is a perfect example of this because it thrives on this. Comparison spending, trying to keep up with others. They got a car, so you want a car. They go on a vacation, and now you feel like you have to go on one too. So, in summary, constantly pouring feelings into spending instead of addressing the root of your spending. So, what is the root? It could be trauma, it could be loneliness, it could be low self worth, low self esteem, or it could be avoidance. Now, personally, I didn't recognize the connection between my emotional wounds and my spending habits. I just thought I like to shop. I just need to make more money to keep up with it. I treated it like it was a hobby. But the truth wasn't it wasn't a hobby. It was an addiction. Someone had to point it out to me that my spending was tied to deeply rooted trauma. And here's the cool part: when you identify and address the root cause, then the toxic spending habit begins to break. So how do you start healing and breaking free from the bondage of emotional healing? Because it is a bondage. Any type of addiction is a bondage. Okay. Bondage cannot come with you on your journey to establishing a healthy financial lifestyle. So, the first thing you want to do is you want to name the emotion before you make the purchase. And so, as you are tracking your expenses, as we've been all tracking our expenses, you want to go ahead and also write down how you feel right before you make that purchase or that transaction. And so you want to do this for at least 30 days. Then you go back and you audit your transactions, and your emotional patterns will become clear. Now, most people don't think to do this because they don't make the connection between emotions and toxic spending habits. Okay? So what's the next step? So you want to create a coping strategy. And so for me, for example, stress was a big trigger. So instead of hitting the malls when I was stressed, I now hit the gym. Low self esteem, I turned to journaling instead of trying to buy worth from a store. Deep trauma, I sought support from someone trained to help me heal the trauma. Okay. The next thing you want to do is you want to press pause. You want to give yourself 24 to 48 hours before making a purchase. And for those big purchases like a car, home, luxury apartment, you want to press pause for 15 to 30 days. Okay. And I still use this method, and trust me, it works. When you press pause and you go back and revisit, more often than not, you don't even remember why you even wanted to make that purchase. And you just move on. The next thing is, if you find that you can't pause, not even for 24 hours, then more than likely that's an indication it's a deeper issue. And trust me, you're not alone. And if you find that this is your case, your situation, and you are ready to get help, then I'll go ahead and leave a link to someone who specializes in helping people get to the root. Now, remember, emotions are a part of us. So, this is not about suppressing or ignoring, but it's about stewardship. Although emotions are a part of us, they are not meant to lead us. We are called to steward our money and not surrender it to our emotions. Now, the Bible tells us to flee from sexual immorality, not to jog or casually walk away, but to flee. And I would say the same applies here. When emotions are leading your spending, flee from that moment, from that transaction. You are not controlled by your emotions. You are not controlled by money. You are a steward with the power to make wise decisions. The biggest thing to remember is that you have to separate your emotions from the spending. That is the only way that you are going to make wise decisions. If you don't separate the two, then you're going to end up making some pretty foolish financial decisions. Learning to separate your emotions from spending is also going to help you in other areas of your life, not just in your financial walk. Okay. So that will do it for this week's episode of the Money Soapbox. Comment below on what has been your biggest takeaway so far in the toxic spending series. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you all next week.